Monday, 5th of August, the brutal Sheikh Hasina regime was toppled in Bangladesh. Then, on Thursday, 15th of August, Afghanistan celebrated 3 years since the end of the US-led occupation. And on Tuesday, 1st of October, occupying Israeli forces invaded Lebanon. Then on Tuesday, 5th of November, Donald Trump was announced as the winner of the 2024 US presidential elections. Sunday, 8th of December, the repressive Bashar al-Assad regime was toppled in Syria. For each of these historic and monumental events that will have a seismic impact for the Muslims of these countries and the region, 5 pillars were on the ground either during these developments or very soon after. Our deputy editor, Dili Hussain, visited his ancestral motherland of Bangladesh in the wake of its renewed independence from the Hasina regime, documenting, reporting and interviewing key stakeholders, revolutionaries and student leaders. Continuing with the Ummah's celebrations, Dili was also present on the 3rd year anniversary of Afghanistan's liberation from the US occupation. During this assignment, Dili interviewed senior officials of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, as well as filming documentaries on the Taliban administration's handling of the opium addiction and infrastructure development.
I'm at the largest drug rehabilitation center in Afghanistan.
Our senior correspondent Robert Carter was reporting from Beirut as Israeli bombs were decimating the southern neighborhood of Dahiyya.
A very big strike. Whoa! Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
We had to get Robert out of Lebanon in an emergency flight as Israel's bombing campaign intensified and international airlines were halting flights. And as American Muslims and pro-Palestinian supporters mobilized in their millions to punish the Biden administration and the Democrats for its complicity in Israel's genocide in Gaza, Robert Carter was also on the ground engaging with grassroots Muslim community leaders, Islamic activists, as well as interviewing the independent presidential candidate, Jill Stein. And finally, the year 2024 came to an end with an unmatic shock. After a bloody 13-year revolution and dynastic tyranny for 54 years, Bashar al-Assad was toppled by Syrian revolutionaries in a military offensive which caught the world by surprise. Dili Hussain was in Damascus to pray the first Jummah after liberation, where he also interviewed the now interim president Ahmed al-Sharaa, as well as documenting the crimes committed by the Assad regime in Sidnaya prison and Tadamon. Both Dili and Robert would have been in Gaza and Sudan had it not been for logistical and political issues placing these assignments on hold. For now, 2024 was the year that 5 pillars proved what it can and will do with the funding and resources required to be the only English language Muslim media outlet that will unapologetically amplify and advance the revival of the Muslim Ummah. Now ask yourselves this: what role will you play in the blessed month of Ramadan in supporting the Ummah's awakening? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Tawbah, انفروا خفافا وثقالا وجاهدوا بأموالكم وأنفسكم في سبيل الله ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers and sisters. I pray you are all in the best of health and iman, inshallah ta'ala. Please forgive me, I am a bit occupied just for 10 seconds as I pin our donation link, inshallah, to our chat. Welcome everyone. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allah has given us the tawfiq, the honor to see another Ramadan and to enter the last 10 nights of Ramadan, of which any of these nights, especially the odd nights, could be Laylat al-Qadr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that this night is better than 1,000 months. So my dear brothers and sisters, it goes without saying that every good deed that we do, every ibadat, every act of sadaqah, every act of goodness and kindness and righteousness, if it happens to fall on Laylat al-Qadr, it is as if we have done this good act for longer than 1,000 months. And that is the ajr that we're trying to reap. That is the ajr that we're trying to gain on this blessed night. Tonight is our first live appeal. It's entitled 2024, the year of riots, revolutions and elections. There's a lot to go through. And the video which we started with kind of recaps how busy 5 Pillars has been in the last 12 months, subhanAllah. And today we will be joined by two guests to discuss some of these topics of discussion, as well as Brother Robert Carter and Roshan very soon. Now, obviously, the main objective of these live appeals is ultimately how you all can help Five Pillars take us to the next level, to support us in any shape and form that you can, but ultimately for you guys to support us financially. You have the details below. You have our PayPal details. You also have our bank details. So you can make a transfer. You can pay via PayPal. And on the YouTube comments, I have pinned the donation link, which you can set up a direct debit or make a one-off donation. There's also the option of making a donation via Super Chats. Now, it's important to state that whatever donation you make via Super Chats, 30% of it is taken by Google, unfortunately. However, that said, if making a donation via Super Chats is the only way in which you can make a donation and support Five Pillars tonight, do not let that 30% prevent you. It's not ideal. You have other options. You can make a donation via our website, fivepillarsuk.com/donate. You have the PayPal link there as well, paypal.me/5pillarsuk. And of course, you have our bank details. Now, without any further delay, I would like to bring on my dear brother, the editor-in-chief and the co-founder of Five Pillars, Roshan Muhammad Saleh.
Assalamu alaikum, Dilly.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Roshan, how are you, brother?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Last 10 nights. So, intensive period where we accelerate our ibadah, and obviously we're very busy with the fundraising as well. So it's going to be an intensive next 10 days.
Inshallah. Now, besides the fact that you're looking quite trim and slim, is that planned, or is that just as a result?
No, I think it's Ramadan. I always lose a bit of weight in Ramadan, then I put it on straight after.
Okay, fair
so
enough.
Yeah, like everybody.
Now, it's important, before we kick off today and our conversation today, it's important to highlight that, look, there'll be so many other live appeals during these last 10 nights. And what you'll find with these live appeals is that every 5 or 10 minutes, there'll be a call to action to donate. Now, Five Pillars live streams aren't necessarily like that. We tend to let the conversation flow and hope that the conversation that we're having, the things that we're showcasing, will be a testimony to the work that we've done. So my dear brothers and sisters, if you see us talking, you see us conversing, you see us having a conversation, please don't forget that the main objective of tonight's live appeals and the other live appeals that we're going to have on the odd nights is ultimately an opportunity for you to support the work of Five Pillars. So please, let's have the first donation of the night. Alhamdulillah, we've had the first donation, £30 from Brother Adil Munir. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and preserve you, my dear brother. You've kicked off tonight with a £30 donation. May Allah make that way heavy on your mizan. Let's hope that many others follow. Roshan, let me ask you this. I entitled today's live appeal as the year of revolutions, riots and elections. Is that an accurate depiction of the year that we've had?
Yeah, we had our annual iftar dinner. I remember in my speech, I basically said that I went through the highlights of the last year. And I think probably the most exciting things that we've done were probably your and Robert's foreign trips to liberated Syria, to liberated Bangladesh, to America for the presidential elections, to Beirut when it was getting bombed by the Israelis. But probably the most impactful thing we did was around the riots. I mean, the riots and the election. I think the election, we obviously helped foment that anti-Labour Muslim vote, which ultimately propelled about 4 or 5 independent MPs into Parliament, including 4 Muslim MPs. And I think we had a big role to play in, leading the conversation about the anti-Muslim, anti-immigration riots as well. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good summary.
So our brother Ibrahim Khan from Islamic Finance Guru, who is also very heavily involved in the Muslim vote, will be our first guest. He'll be joining us in about 5 to 10 minutes. I should also add that our dear brother and longtime supporter Rehan Rashid from Oldham has just made a donation of £25. May Allah make that way heavy on your mizan. And I always have to give a shout out to our brother Rehan, who's also a moderator in our comments, by the way. This brother, wallahi, has supported us since 2013. And I mean, not forget about the monthly commitment he always has been given. He always gives in Ramadan. He encourages his family and his friends. He encourages the locals in Oldham. And alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, our brother Rehan always puts his money where his mouth is. Always, without a shadow of a doubt, without any failure. So may Allah bless our brother Rayhan. It is supporters like Rayhan that has basically got us to where we are today. Would you agree, Roshan? People who have been supporting us since basically day one. These are the kind of
it's those people giving, you know, the £5 a month, 10 quid a month, 20 quid a month. You know, obviously the one-off donations are fantastic and wonderful, and we encourage that. But I think it's the donors that have been with us right from the start, giving not necessarily massive amounts, but it allows us to plan ahead because we know how much money is coming in. So that's the backbone of 5 pillars ultimately.
Alhamdulillah. Now, it's also important to stipulate that we are happy. We are happy, alhamdulillah, brother Adil Munir, jazakallah khair. We are absolutely happy to carry on conversing through the night. But ultimately, what encourages us and what incentivizes us is that you continue supporting and giving. So I would like you all who are tuned in right now to set challenges for each other, to compete with one another in goodness and khair. So please, my dear brothers and sisters, give and give in a big and generous way. There is a verse of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, and strive with your wealth and do not destroy yourselves with your own hands. Allah here is talking about jihad fi sabilillah. He's telling the Muslims to strive with their wealth and not to destroy ourselves by not giving. Now, there is no shadow of a doubt that every alim, every scholar, every person of knowledge that we've spoken to, whether they're Deobandi, Salafi, Brelvi, Ikhwani, whatever leanings they come from, they have told us in no uncertain terms, and Roshan will agree with me with this, that we are fighting a jihad in the media. Our jihad here is not one of the weapon, because that's not appropriate, it's not befitting, it doesn't apply here. But indeed, the jihad that 5 pillars has been fighting since 2013 is one of the mouth and one of the pen, and one which is in the media front. So my dear brothers and sisters, give for the sake of Allah, strive with your wealth, and do not destroy yourselves with miserliness and stinginess. And not on this night. Of all the nights that you may think twice, oh, should I give? I may not give. Are there better causes? Wallahi, the last 10 nights of Ramadan is those nights, it's that concluding part of Ramadan where the race is won. You know, we all kind of have burnouts at the beginning of Ramadan. We give, and we kind of have a burnout. Don't let the last 10 nights be that period. The last 10 nights is where you give across the board: humanitarian, dawah, media, advocacy, those family and friends who have rights over you. Support in every khair that you're able to do. Now, Roshan, we'll get to the international assignments. We will get to the international assignments. I'll be discussing that with Robert, with Tox, who'll be joining us later on tonight. But how seismic, in your perspective, were the events of Bangladesh and Syria?
Well, Bangladesh, I think you can speak more about, because obviously that's your homeland. Bangladesh has always been a bit of a weak point for me in terms of knowledge, but obviously I can see what Sheikh Hasina was, and even the other people, Khalid Azir, a bit like in Pakistan with you know, the Bhuttos and the Sharifs. And sorry, Jenny, 1 second. I'm just going to have to kind of log off for a second.
That's fine. That's no worries. So, my dear brothers and sisters, revolutions, Allahu Akbar. Sister Zara Faruqi has just made a donation of £25. May Allah bless you and preserve you and make that way heavy on your mizan. Ameen ya Rabb. May the donation that you just made be a means to purify your wealth, an expiation of your sins, and inshallah you'll get a share of the work that you have just supported. 2024 was a crazy year for us. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, 2024 was perhaps the busiest year for myself and 5 pillars as a whole, for 2 reasons. Number one, as a result of a very successful previous Ramadan, the funds that were raised enabled us to do the work that we had to do. I was in Bangladesh, in my ancestral motherland, within 4 to 6 weeks of the Hasina regime toppling. I was in Syria within a week of Bashar al-Assad regime toppling. I prayed the first Jum'ah at Masjid al-Umawi, and also I managed to meet and interview the now President Ahmad al-Shara and managed to make short films. It was crazy. Then you had Robert going out to Lebanon when Israel was bombing Dahiyya, the southern neighborhood of Beirut. We actually had to get him out. We had to get, if you recall, Roshan, it's a quite a high intensity pressure time because all the international flights were cancelling, and there was a genuine safety risk for Robert, and we had to get him out, but he wanted to stay. We sent Robert off to the US during the elections, where he managed to speak to Jill Stein and other key Muslim activists and faith leaders in Dearborn and other areas. And of course, let's not downplay the events of the UK, the Muslim vote, the galvanizing and the mobilizing and the coordination of the Muslims in the UK in punishing Labour for enabling and being complicit in Israel's genocide in Gaza. Let's also not forget how close, even though Jeremy Corbyn plus 4 independent Muslim MPs got to the House of Commons, we'll later discuss how close another 5 or 6 of them were. They were literally by the skin of their teeth. They nearly had won. Liane Mohammed, brother Jody McIntyre, there was a brother called Imran in Bradford, Ajmal Masroor. So many of them came so close to winning and becoming independent pro-Gaza MPs. We can debate the fruits of parliamentary politics in terms of advancing the causes and the interests of the Muslims. That's a completely separate discussion. But the point of the matter is, for the first time after a very long time, Muslims managed to show a semblance of organization and coordination in punishing Labour. And we saw that in large swathes in many parts of the Midlands and the North and in London. Roshan, do let me know when Ibrahim has joined us.
Yeah,
so,
are the super chats active?
They should be active.
People are saying they're not active.
Okay, I don't know why they shouldn't be active. Yes, it is active.
No.
It is active. It is active. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar wa lillahi alhamd. Our brother or sister X100 has just made a donation via Super Chat. That's the first Super Chat donation of tonight. My dear brothers and sisters, I will reiterate that if Super Chats is the only way in which you believe you can support 5 Pillars tonight, do it. Don't let that be an obstacle to not. Obviously, preferably, we'd like you to make a donation via our website, 5pillaruk.com/donate, or via PayPal. But if Super Chats is the only way, Bismillah, give. We've just had Brother Arfan, who's also made a donation via PayPal, so they're coming in. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, wa lillahi alhamd. May all these donations, big or small, weigh heavy on everyone's scales. And what do I mean by on the scales? We know that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the Day of Judgment, there will be a mizan, there will be a scale of which every atom weight of good and every atom weight of bad will be placed on this scale. So every goodness and khair that we do, especially in these blessed months, we want them to weigh heavy on the mizan, heavy on the side of our good. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that our book of deeds is given to us and we receive it with our right hand. Roshan, talk to me. So you didn't manage to do any international assignments.
I went to The Hague. I took a 45-minute flight to The Hague. Come on.
You did, and you stuck it.
Yeah, I managed to doorstep that Israeli journalist, didn't I? So that was
you did, mashallah. But how did it? I mean, how's the year been for you as an editor?
Look, I've taken a bit of a step back over the last year for various reasons in terms of reporting, and you and Robert especially has done the bulk of reporting in the UK and abroad. I think I'm getting more bogged down a little bit in management behind the scenes, doing all the necessary stuff, but sometimes unglamorous stuff. I would like to be in front of the camera a little bit more, and because that's my first love, isn't it? Reporting and going places and being in the thick of the action. I do miss it a little bit, but I think I'm most effective in the organization in terms of the good of the whole organization. Unfortunately, I'm a bit more effective kind of behind the scenes managing. We've got a growing team as well, and many projects to oversee. So someone's going to do that, and that's me. But alhamdulillah. But just to answer your question earlier, really briefly. So Bangladesh, I'll leave that to you.
Sure.
But all I can say is, alhamdulillah, we have a secular dictatorship which has been overthrown, and alhamdulillah, most Bengalis that I know are absolutely delighted that's happened.
They are.
Let's just hope that the next regime that comes in is something better. Syria, of course, took us all by surprise. I was somebody who didn't expect that to happen. I don't think many expected that to happen. It happened because of the changing geopolitical circumstances with Russia bogged down in Ukraine and Iran taking many, many heavy blows at the hands of Israel in Lebanon and elsewhere. So that allowed a window of opportunity for a regime change in Syria. And all I can say is that perhaps I'm not so optimistic as you are about the situation in Syria. I'm so glad that Assad has gone. Obviously, that Alawite minority regime was not sustainable, and has serious blood on its hands in in a fashion that disgusts us all, quite frankly. So alhamdulillah that they've gone and Bashar is gone. I just hope that Syria does not become the playthings of major powers, and that it can forge an Islamic future, a stable future, a future which can, obviously be a block to Israeli impediment, an impediment to Israeli ambitions as well, inshallah.
Absolutely, and I just want to share those sentiments with you. That whilst you, for a good part of the Syrian revolution, were very critical, skeptical with regards to the events and the different players and stakeholders that were interfering in Syria, ultimately, my dear brothers and sisters, we want a strong and stable and prosperous Syria. And not just strong, stable and prosperous, but a strong, stable, prosperous Islamic Syria. And a Syria which will ultimately be grounded upon anti-Zionism, and that it will not abandon the Palestinian cause. That is ultimately what we hope and pray and want from Syria. I want to give a shout out to Brother Nasser Khan from Bedford, who has just made a donation of £30. May Allah bless him and preserve him. He is a brother who has supported Five Pillars throughout the years. May Allah make that way heavy on his mizan, and he's someone who's always promoted and pushed Five Pillars. May Allah bless you and preserve you, Brother Nas. Our brother Muhammad Mudassar has just made a donation of £10 via the website. Please make dua for our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Let's not forget what's happening in Gaza. Let's not forget the 17 months of a live stream genocide and the 2 months of some respite, even though Israel has breached the ceasefire terms multiple times the last 2 months. And just 2 days ago, 2 nights, they killed in a cold-blooded, cowardly fashion at least 400 Palestinians in Gaza whilst they slept, some of them waking up for suhoor. Most of them were children and babies and women. This cowardly, satanic, occupying, criminal, terrorist entity of Israel, let's not lose our focus. The fact that what we have seen before our own eyes in 4K in terms of what's been happening in Gaza. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring relief to our brothers and sisters in Gaza. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove and replace their difficulty, their suffering with ease and liberation. Ameen ya Rabb. The cries and the pleas of the widows and the orphans, that after they say Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel, after they say Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, turning only to Allah, that ultimately they are calling out to the Arab states, the Muslim rulers, the Muslim countries to be doing more. And I'm going to use this opportunity to remind the Muslim countries and the Muslim governments that there is a responsibility upon your neck. There is a responsibility in your neck to be doing way more than what you've already been doing. And a lot of them, the vast majority, have been doing nothing. Many of them have been complicit. Many of them have had their hands dripped in the blood of the Gazans. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah guides these rulers or replaces them with something better, who will act with taqwa and to intervene to prevent this bloodshed. Ameen ya Rabb. So, we've had Gaza, we've had the Syria front. Let's talk about the UK elections. July 2024, landslide victory for Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. How effective do you think the Muslim vote was in this election?
It was quite inspiring, I think. Often we're a very divided community, aren't we? Along nationalistic lines, sectarian lines, etc. But I think we can say that the community coalesced during that period with an absolute disgust at the way Labour had enabled this genocide and a determination to punish Labour at the ballot box. And that happened to a large extent. In terms of wins, there were 5 wins, clear wins in Birmingham, Bradford, London and elsewhere, getting 4 Muslim MPs, independent Muslim MPs into Parliament, as well as playing a role in getting Jeremy Corbyn into Parliament. But there were so many close seconds. We'll see that perhaps a little bit later on because we got a little.
Let's do it now.
Can
you,
okay.
So first place the graphics of the winning candidates. So we just got over them. And then straight after, we look at those who were, so here we have the newly elected pro-Palestine independent MPs. Jeremy Corbyn, I think that was a comfortable seat. He's been there for donkey's years. But the other four were very interesting because me and Robert and yourself, we engaged with many of the candidates. Funnily enough, with the exception to Adnan Hussein and Blackburn and the dramas that took place there, Shaukat Adam took us by surprise. Iqbal Hussein took us by surprise. Ayub Khan in Birmingham took us by surprise. But the Ayub Khan was a beautiful surprise because I think he replaced that really foul individual, Khalid Mahmood. Like, oh my God, like the most.
Yeah, I think Iqbal Muhammad was a bit of a surprise for me. But the others, I think we had a sense that they were going to go quite close. I actually interviewed Shaukat a few weeks before, and he was very confident. I didn't believe him. I thought he was just talking. I thought it was PR, to be honest. But he proved us all wrong by winning quite comfortably and taking out that I can't remember his name. Is it Jonathan Ashworth?
John Ashworth.
Blairite. Yeah, that Blairite guy. And, yeah. So, but there were so many close seconds, and there were some that I thought were going to win that didn't win, like Ahmed Yaqub. I thought he would win.
Yeah.
In Birmingham, very close.
Jody McIntyre.
Well. Yeah. Liam Mohammed, I thought would win. But close. These were people that lost by just a few hundred votes. So I think overall we can say that there was such a thing as the Muslim vote. It coalesced against the disgust at Labour and its support for Israel during this genocide, and it really hurt Labour. And now we're seeing Labour trying to get that Muslim vote back. You've seen them go out above and beyond.
They're trying very hard.
They're trying very hard because they recognise the threat from Reform UK, perhaps going into coalition with the Conservatives, and that would give them a clear majority at the next election, which would make, despite the fact that Labour won a landslide, they didn't win that landslide because they were popular. They won a landslide because the Tories were unpopular, and they could very well lose that at the next election. So they need that Muslim vote, and their pitch to the voters is going to be, it's us or reform. So we have to think very carefully about, because this anti-Labour momentum has to go on and on and on. It can't be a one election thing. We go back to Labour like we always have done. No, we've got to come up with a different strategy, a longer term strategy, and not always get into this trap of lesser of two evils.
So a couple of points. I mean, let's also not forget the huge gains made by the Liberal Democrats. They made huge gains. I think they managed to get 60 plus MPs in many strong Tory constituencies, but I don't think they were banking on the Muslim or the Gaza vote. Jonathan Ashworth was the guy that Shaukat Adam dethroned, and he was a proper Zionist character. He even made some very racist comments towards Bangladeshis towards the end of his campaign, and I was like, what was the point of that? Our brother Tariq has just made a donation of $10. Isn't the USA the ultimate problem today? They are what Israel wants to be. From 1600 to 1900, USA reduced its natives to 1% of the population. Israel seeks to do the same. I think the USA controls it all. There is much truth to that. I think that we need to see a receding of US hegemony in the region, in the Muslim majority world. I think breathing space for the Muslim majority world will happen in a multipolar universe or global play where there's competing superpowers.
Yeah.
Even if you look at back in the Cedar, when Islam was first emerging from the Arabian Peninsula, there was the Byzantine Empire, Roman Empire in the West, and there was the Persian Empire in the East, and they were competing with one another. So I personally am of the opinion that if there's going to be any hopeful future within the Muslim majority world in terms of political autonomy, it would happen in a multipolar universe, in a multipolar world, not one where there's Pax Americana and they're running the show everywhere, which unfortunately still remains to be the case. Yes, China is an economic powerhouse. Yes, Russia is still militarily very strong and is a superpower, but ultimately the global economy is pinned on the US dollar. They are still the main contributors and givers of the IMF and the World Bank, in which many of Muslim majority countries are enslaved by these loans, which are conditioned with political deals and caveats of all sorts. Brother Ibrahim might be running a bit late, but let's look at some of the...
Ibrahim's just joined. I can just see him behind the scenes.
So before we bring Ibrahim on, big up to Brother Asif. Allah bless you. He's just made a donation of £20. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make that way heavy on your mizan. Now, our brother Ibrahim Allahu Akbar, Brother Ronan. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah bless you. Make that way heavy on your mizan. Brothers and sisters, the donations are coming in. Please continue giving. Don't stop giving. And don't think that because you've given once, you can't give again. Inspire one another. Encourage one another. Compete in goodness and khair. Now, before I bring on Brother Ibrahim is a dear brother of ours. He is someone that we've known before the whole Muslim vote stuff. He's most famously known for the Islamic Finance Guru publication, channel, outlet, where he advises Muslims in the UK primarily to make ethical and Islamically inclined decisions when it comes to finance, as well as donations and charitable giving. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ibrahim, how are you, bro?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's great to be on.
And I'm honored to have you on, bro.
I'll just say salam to Ibrahim, and then I might go in the background if that's all right, Dilly.
Sure, no worries.
And then you carry on. How are you doing, Ibrahim? Have you been traveling? I've seen on your Facebook you've been traveling here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I've moved up to Manchester, so I'm between London and Manchester. So
but you didn't go abroad anywhere?
Italy, I think.
Oh, right. Just a holiday. The Islamic
holiday, actually, it was for to do some Islamic finance education type stuff.
Right.
Yeah, but we had lots of pizza.
I don't even rate the Italian pizza, bro. It's too thin crust. I don't feel it. We're too used to the American thick bread pizza. When I went to Rome, yeah, and I was having the thin crust pizza, I was like, how's this gonna fill me up? I was rolling it up and I was eating it.
It's like roti, isn't it? I think
it is.
Every time you mention pineapple to them, they get a heart attack. That's an easy way to rile up an Italian.
Yeah, let's split there, because even that's quite offensive, Ibrahim. Pineapple.
All right, Ibrahim, I'll catch up with you later, inshallah.
Inshallah.
But I'm going to pop into the background for a bit. I'll let you chat with Dilly. All right, assalamu alaikum.
Ibrahim, works up. Ibrahim, so one of the themes of today's live stream is the elections. And I know that you played a key role within the Muslim vote as a supporter, someone who's also giving counsel and advice. Let me ask you the first question. What was the main objective behind the organization and mobilization around the Muslim vote?
I think the whole thing started, in a way, it's quite pertinent that we're talking about it now. The whole thing started because we, lazy as we all are as the Muslim community, we were galvanized because of the slaughter of our brothers and sisters that we were seeing in Palestine. And we felt helpless, and I think all of us wanted to do something. And a bunch of people realized that actually the biggest thing that really could be done was to change the narrative, right? And try and influence things politically. And of course, part of this is also about this country, right? Because the Muslim situation here is not very good, but it took Palestine to actually bring us together, to actually move us to action. And so the whole point behind the Muslim vote, and it was a very organic thing that came together with lots of people, thinking about the same thing and wanting to be united in the cause, was about uniting the Muslim voice across this country and coordinating it for the first time, so that people take us seriously and actually listen to what it is that we have to say. It's shocking that unfortunately, the other side of this debate and many other debates are actually very few in number, but because they are well funded, they are articulate, and they are organized, and they really work hard. Unfortunately, even despite the fact that we are many in number compared to them, and we have the truth on our side, we actually end up not being as strong. So that was the whole point behind the Muslim vote, which is...
Do you think it was a success? Do you think it was a fair shot? Do you think it was a success?
I think so, yeah. I think if you look at it from a perspective of 0 to 6 months, with tiny amounts of funding and a huge amount of support from people like you and others, everyone contributed in their own way. And to have a result where you have 5 independent MPs, where there is no community infrastructure, none of us had gone canvassing and knocking on doors and knew anything really about politics, to have that kind of result, which, if you compare it to history, since the 1960s, because of the way that the political system is in the UK, it's very hard to get an independent.
Absolutely.
and we've only had one independent since the 1960s in all of the elections. So to have 5 in one just shows the power of it. And actually, it was, you know, there were ministers that we managed to get out of power. Jonathan Ashworth in Leicester is a classic example of that. That's a big signal. There's other MPs and ministers where their majority, they were coasting. They thought
West Streeting,
West Streeting, Shabana Mahmood, and others. They had huge majorities, and they thought this was very comfortable. And actually, they were within a whisker. You know, a whole bunch of Muslims didn't. You know, many people did turn up, but then some people thought, all right, you know, it's never going to happen, and they didn't turn up. And
had they turned up,
it could have been 10. It could have been
Roshan, can you please share the image? Brother Abu Robinson, Jazakallah khair for that donation. May Allah bless you and preserve you. He has asked, is it time for the Muslims to have a lobby in the UK similar to the US lobby? We can address that in a bit. Roshan, can you show the infographic of those who came second very closely? Those who, look at that. Wow. Sister Leanne, 528. That's West Streeting's constituency.
These are fractions. These are fractions.
These are fractions, bro.
Look at Ajmal Masroor. Ajmal Masroor, he'd overturned a 30,000 plus majority. That's unheard of. Like, it doesn't happen. Liane Mohammed, she probably was within 500 votes of toppling who is likely to be the future prime minister.
Jody.
All of them. I think it's the power of the Muslim community when it unites.
Thanks, Roshan.
Yeah.
That was really close, subhanAllah. I want to play another clip. Now, this clip, I chose this clip. It was from the podcast that we did a year and a half ago. And it's kind of linked to a Facebook post that you posted. And it got circulated in lots of groups, by the way. It was about where Zakah should be going and where...
Oh, really?
Yeah. Roshan, can we play the clip from the podcast that me and Ibrahim did a little while ago?
What I find problematic is that we as a community will give in to that charity's appeal. That's what I find problematic.
But that's because giving sadaqah for many people is an emotional thing, bro.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that you keep the emotion, but start switching on that rational mind as well.
Okay.
Because sure, it's true that, you know, we give emotionally, that's great, but don't just give emotionally. Because if you're going to do that, then what is the net result of what's happening? As I said, is 150 million pounds. That's a lot of money.
That is
going to be deployed to people who are ultimately, you know, they're really good at emotional appeals and they're really good at social media marketing. But is that a really good criteria for where charity should be going? I don't think so.
Blood Brothers Podcast. My Appeal is a production.
Ibrahim, do you care to elaborate on your recent Facebook post where you articulated why Zakah should be given to the UK, which I know is a contentious subject for many, and what is the strategic thinking behind giving in the UK, and what type of initiatives, even though 5 pillars is not Zakah eligible, I know that in previous years you have supported us. Last year you supported, mashallah, you have supported us with a strategic mindset. Elaborate on why you think this is how we need to shift and pivot our way of giving.
Yeah, I think the way I think about the first thing is, you know, giving to the UK. So let's talk about that and strategic giving versus, you know, giving to international aid. So let's talk about that as a topic, and then let's talk about the use of zakat within this, right? Sure. So I think in terms of the first topic, giving to the UK. There are many scriptural sources that say that you should give locally. Like it's a complete no-brainer from an Islamic scriptural perspective. You know, all of the madhahib scholars would agree that you should start giving locally. And so for us to be neglecting that almost entirely, it just is completely bonkers. It's actually not scripturally accurate for us to be doing that. That's
one thing. I agree with you that there is a near consensus on this subject, about giving locally. But would it be fair to say that near consensus throughout the centuries, throughout Islamic civilization and jurisprudential works, it was locality still within Darul Islam, as opposed to now, which is a complete different reality, whereby can you really compare the poverty of the UK and the West to the poverty of war-stricken lands and famine-stricken lands? I ask you that.
So I'm not denying that we should 100% give international aid and we should give to overseas, but the problem is that if we only ever give to there, then there are actually really struggling people right here in the UK, right? And there's no reason why there's actually really good reason why we should prefer sorting out poverty in this country as opposed to overseas. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that we want to try and end poverty. We want to really try and cut off the root causes of it. And rather than giving the man a fish, we don't want to even just teach the man a fish. We want to build the factory. We want to give him the rod. We want to change the fishing regulations. That's actually really what causes long-term change. And it might be that giving that charity, giving the man a fish feels a lot nicer than sorting out the fishing regulations, which allow him to fish. That it doesn't feel as as impactful, but actually that is far more impactful. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us to give with our eyes and minds wide open, right? He's not just asking us to give emotionally and it's almost selfish, right? It just makes us, if it's just making us feel good, but actually it's not doing anything, then what is it that we're actually, why is it that we're giving? Are we just doing it to please ourselves? So I would really ask us to challenge ourselves on that. And I'm not saying, by the way, we shouldn't. We 100% should give always to international aid and overseas, but we should also give a portion to this country. And if you've got £1 billion, and of that a tiny 0 point something percent is coming to this country, that scale is just warped, completely warped. And in 50 years' time, 25 years' time, when our children and our brothers and sisters are leaving Iman in their droves, and our situation in this country is even worse than it is now, we are the own protagonists in this. We are the ones who are architecting this future ourselves. And if we don't stop now, we are sleepwalking, I think, into a crisis.
My next question to you is, how closely linked do you think that the riots that we saw pretty much a month after the elections was linked to the pro-Palestine event marches week in, week out, the narrative, the propaganda around coining these peaceful marches as hate marches? How much do you think the events that preceded the riots that we saw last summer, which was as a result of the wake of the tragic Southport killings, where 3 young girls were killed, others were stabbed and injured quite significantly. There was a mass disinformation campaign on X with the likes of Andrew Tate, Reform supporters, Lawrence Fox, so many others chipping in, saying that the Southport killer was an illegal immigrant, he was a Muslim. Do you think the riots that we saw last summer were linked in any shape or form to the protests, the mobilization and the solidarity shown for Palestine?
What do you mean? What, as in the link?
Link meaning, like, obviously when people started rioting last summer, you see what appeared to be the case, that there was even a type of justification that, oh, these are people who are frustrated, they are angry, mass migration, these are white working class people that are just voicing their grievances.
And it wasn't the same for Palestine, the pro-Palestine marches.
It wasn't. I know it wasn't, but I'm just saying, do you think that any of that was like a precursor in terms of what was boiling up, or do you think there were two kind of completely detached events?
I think there's ultimately there are similarities between where they come from. Ultimately, I think it comes from an elite that runs this country, which takes people who don't agree with them or who don't look or feel like them for granted. And in many ways, even though the two people who were protesting or rioting were being set up against each other, and at some level we don't like the ones who were rioting. In many ways, they are both the victims of the elite in our country who run this, because the people who are rioting, I genuinely feel sorry for them. Like if you go to a city like Blackpool, or you go to some of these places,
Middlesbrough.
Hartlepool or Middlesbrough. I mean, I grew up in some of these places. My parents live in Blackpool, so I see it firsthand. The people, the elite in London and some of these cities, who are getting richer and richer every single year as a result of these policies that they're coming up with, and without going into the financial side, these are policies that are widening that gap. I would feel as angry as they did when they were rioting. Now, of course, there's an underlying like racism to it, and that was captured, and it was kind of fermented and pushed further. On the same side, you've got the pro-Palestinian protesters who are seeing that this elite, they have decided that because it is in their their interest, their economic interest, their political interest to back injustice, they then want to march and protest against that. And unfortunately, they don't necessarily, the pro-Palestine side doesn't have the power in their hands. Of course, that's with the elite. So at some level, there's this disenfranchisement with what everyone actually wants, what is good for the people, whoever they might be, Muslim, non-Muslim, white, black, brown, poor, etc., and the elite who are running this place. And that's why I think if you look at the elections, you have this big bifurcation that's happened where you've got the right wing splintering with the Tories and Reform, and then on the left wing side, even though Labour won a massive victory, it was a very, very thin victory, in the sense that the majorities were very, very thin for the first time, and the number of votes they won actually went down by 500,000, right? And Green Party and the Independents and Plaid Cymru and SNP and a number of others, the Lib Dems, they had significant wins as a result of that. And so that reflects the fact that the left is now split between those who back justice and injustice, and the right is now split as well between the really poor who feel like on the value side we agree with the right, but the elite of the right have left us behind.
Two questions before I let you go, my dear brother. 2029 elections. If Gaza was the reason why the Muslims mobilized, galvanized, coordinated, and got together, can we keep this momentum up for another 4 years? If so, what will be the cause? What will be the unifying factor in 2029, do you believe?
I really hope that this massacre and slaughter that we're seeing in Palestine isn't still going by 2029. I'm not even sure that it's humanly possible that it would still be going in 2029. If that is not, if Gaza isn't the issue that is galvanizing us at that point, I think the issue that should galvanize us is how Islam and Muslims are being perceived and seen in the West today. And I mean that actually from both a defensive perspective, because you're seeing open Islamophobia for the first time in ways that you would never expect from the most powerful people in the world, the Donald Trumps and Elon Musks of the world, in a way that this like kind of neo-fascism has become completely mainstream. So that's one perspective, that we need to unite to protect ourselves against that. But then the second part of this is that what would Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam do if he was in this country? He would be looking to present the beautiful message and perspective of Islam in all of its facets, in the economic sphere, in the political sphere, in the cultural sphere. And if we as Muslims actually adopted the real seerah and we stood up and we took that on board, we would actually become intensely political creatures. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a huge part of that seerah was deeply political, and Islam is political in the sense that Islam is a negotiation, is an understanding, is a manifestation of how society and cultures and civilizations should be. And if that is the case, then we must be engaged in the discourse of politics in order to be, properly Muslim.
Final question. What you just described there, critics, haters, or just genuine people who may have some concern will say this sounds like sectarian, identitarian politics. In fact, that's one of the things which the Muslim Vote was accused of by the likes of GB News, the likes of Talk TV, the likes of Nigel Farage himself, said that this is, and even some Labour MPs have said this is sectarian politics. We've never seen anything like this in the UK. But the truth of the matter is, no one says that when British Jews organise. No one says that when British Hindus organise. Why do you think this was levied at the Muslim Vote and the Muslim community in the last elections?
I think it actually comes from a deeply racist place, right? Exactly as you said, when other folks organize according to certain lines, it's acceptable, and it's also, I think, indicative of a society that unfortunately has become increasingly faithless, right? And when you don't have faith, you can't understand why someone would want to unite around a set of values that you don't necessarily believe in. But actually, any political party, if you boil it down, is just a set of values that you are campaigning around. And so if we believe, as Muslims in a certain set of things, then, we should be allowed to unite and coordinate around that. The interesting thing is that the Muslim Vote backed many, many non-Muslims. Actually, most of them were non-Muslims that were being backed. So there's a deep irony. In fact, sometimes the non-Muslims were being backed against Muslims. So there's a deep irony to that claim. And then the second thing I would say is that who are the mainstream politicians to lecture us about sectarian politics when they have been long exploiting brotherly systems and long exploiting local mosques and coming in and presenting their wares in front of the masajid? Who was playing sectarian politics at that point? So I think if you compare the two, I would say that what we were seeing from the Muslim community at the grassroots was a refreshing move away from sectarian politics and actually looking at things from a first principles perspective of who is standing for justice.
Any concluding words to our viewers and listeners in terms of encouragement to support Five Pillars in these concluding nights?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an incredible opportunity here to potentially shape this country in a direction that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would want us to shape it in the direction of, and if we, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was saying that, by 2050, 2060, 70, 80, we are either going to see many, many people who used to be Muslim, like we do in Spain and Portugal, but who have lost their faith completely, and just have this echo of Islam in their families, or we're going to see non-Muslims, white, Anglo-Saxon, Brits accepting Islam in their droves. And that there is, and you might think that's crazy, that can't happen. But when 1400 years ago the Romans and the Byzantines were discussing and thinking, who's going to win this land and who's going to rule the world, no one thought about these Bedouins in the desert on camels. They weren't. It wasn't even part of the conversation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do anything, and if we truly believe that, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he talks about giving da'wah, he talks about manifesting the power of Islam. The only way that happens is through media and through culture and through discourse. Like, why was the Quran even revealed in a powerful form, that transcended poetry, right? Because that was the media of the time.
Sahih.
That was the media of the time. And so if we are going to be competing in the battle for ideas, and we're going to be competing in this huge kind of civilizational discourse, and we're not even talking the lingo of media, then we're missing the wood for the trees. And so I would highly, highly encourage our dear brothers and sisters who are watching this to donate to 5 Pillars, donate to strategic causes. You might want to donate your sadaqah. There are certain people, myself included, who would think that actually the understanding of zakat is much broader than sometimes we understand. And you might want to, if you do adopt that view, then you might want to donate your zakat as well. But regardless, this is a cause that needs to be supported. And if we do not support it, then we are putting our futures on the line.
Ibrahim, may Allah bless you and preserve you. Ameen. Jazakallah khair for your kind words and for your time. Keep us in your du'as, and we'll be speaking off camera soon, inshallah ta'ala, my dear brother. Take care.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. That was our dear brother Ibrahim Khan from Islamic Finance Guru, who also played a key role in the formation and the steering of the Muslim vote. Now, before we bring on brother Tox, who'll be joining us in about 5 minutes, Roshan, we've been speaking about the riots, but many of us will probably have forgotten what took place in that week to 10 days. And before you play some of those videos from the riots, I just want to give a shout out to brother Muhammad Waqas from Birmingham, a long-time supporter who's made a donation, brother Nafis Mahmoud, who made a donation via PayPal, and brother Atariq, who also made another super chat payment, but also asked us, what is the situation of Muslims in the UK? Is it better than the Muslims in the US? Obviously, many of us in the UK would say that our situation, at least collectively from a standpoint of faith and identity, and is probably better. Brother Abu Robinson has just made another donation. Allah bless you and preserve you. Ameen. We will discuss about the plan ahead towards the end of the live stream. Roshan, can you please play the clips of the riots 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? Some of them are quite comical. Others will give you a taste of what actually happened last year, inshallah, last summer.
Go on! Go on, Jake! Ah! Get off! Get on!
Aftermath of someone bringing his pen.
Oh, this is unfortunate timing. I brought walking down the street. She's all turn in.
Oh, fucking hell, I caught that. Fucking hell, as if I caught that.
Screen recording?
Nah, man, I'm fucking was.
Good call us. Good call us.
How we doing? He's just been assaulted, that gentleman.
Get him on the bike, mate. Get yourself, do yourself a little something.
Stop the fucking boats. Get them out of them hotels. Get them gone. Put them on boats and send them back. Okay? They shouldn't be here. They're endangering the safety of our families. Men will rise up. We're always going to rise up. They have to rise up to defend their families. You've brought this war on our shores.
Now, those were just some clips from the events of last summer. We're waiting for our brother Tuki Talks to join us, where we'll be discussing the events of Syria. And then after that, our dear brother Robert Carter will be joining us around about 11:15, 11:20. We saw some examples from Hartlepool, Blackpool, Middlesbrough, some parts of London, where people of ethnic origin, of immigrant descent, blacks, South Asians, anyone that was non-white were lynched, were attacked, were beaten up. There were other footage of people hiding on buses, people of color, blacks and Asians, Muslims, non-Muslims were too scared to get out of the bus. There were many, many examples whereby Muslim houses in Muslim majority areas and communities were attacked. The houses were smashed. Taxi cars were attacked. Cabbies were attacked. The masjid in Southport was firebombed. Hotels were firebombed. It was a horrific 7 days of mindless rioting, all based around the fake news and the disinformation that was being spread and stirred up on X with regards to the religion and the ethnicity and the immigration status of the Southport killer. It surfaced actually that the Southport killer was someone who was born in the UK. His parents came here as migrants and actually came from a devout Christian family. It had nothing to do with him being an illegal immigrant, and it had nothing to do with him being a Muslim. Yet we saw 7 days of mindless rioting. Many of us in the UK will know. Of course, there was a community mobilization in many areas, in Birmingham, in Bradford, in Stoke, in Blackburn, in parts of East London, in my hometown of Bedford and Luton. There were attempts by the Muslim community to come out in numbers and to protect their homes, their places of worship, their neighbors, as well as the places of worship of other communities. Our brother Tox is trying to join. He's having some issues. Let me just drop him a message. Everything okay? Just bear with me. And I know I asked Brother Ibrahim whether he felt that the months of pro-Palestine demonstrations was linked to the riots. What I meant by that was that for over a year, the British public were being fed that these are hate marches. These are marches which are based around supporting Hamas and the events of October the 7th. These were marches for sympathizers and defenders of terrorism. That ultimately these are people who are against the interests of Britain. They wanted the demise of the British and Western civilization. Now, ultimately, these are people who supported acts of criminality. And this is what was being fed to the British public day in, day out for over a year. So naturally, as a result of being fed this propaganda, that when it came to the tragic events of Southport, all it needed was a match, a spark, to have led to the mindless racism and xenophobia and Islamophobia that we saw for those 7 to 10 days. What made it even worse, actually, was that there were commentators and pundits that were excusing away this type of behavior. There's one thing, peacefully protesting against mass migration or immigration or unfettered migration or criminals being let into this country. That's one thing. But to be firebombing hotels, attacking places of worship, attacking mosques, attacking blacks and Asians, Muslims and non-Muslims, people who are not white, calling, inciting religious and racial hatred from social media. There were people, prominent pundits, that were making excuses for this type of behavior. But we could discuss the riots later on. I believe our brother Toki Tok Sharif from Life Updates from Syria, a prominent and well-known humanitarian aid worker as well as an activist, is now joining us. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are we doing, bro? What do we have here? What's going on?
All types of things happen on. But the thing is, our live stream are not like your live streams. Your live streams are an absolute mazza, depending on what time of the night we're joining. But look, bro, Jazakallah khair for coming on. I know we've only got you for about 15, 20 minutes. Let's talk about Syria, bro. Hold on. Before we even get into Syria, Roshan, can you please play the clip of talks from the Blood Brothers podcast from the Sheraton in Damascus within a week of liberation, please?
I think that we need to be critical so that we can become better. That's very important. But at the same time, if we do something good, then we need to enjoy that and embrace that. And that's my position with this current situation. And no one can take it away from the brothers here. Whether they made a deal, whether they didn't make a deal, we're sitting in Damascus, bro. We are sitting in Damascus now. You know, the Ahl Sunnah, the people of Sunnah here, will not be brutalized, will not be oppressed just for the beliefs that they hold. And that's big, bro. That's big.
Since that conversation talk, so much has happened. We've had, in recent weeks, coup attempts in Latakia and Tartus. We've had attacks on government security forces. Syria has been getting bombed by Israel. Israeli forces are in Daraa, or just south of Daraa. What's the situation, bro? Considering that conversation we had to where we are now, is Syria still a subject of optimism for the Muslim Ummah?
Yeah, I think 100% it still is. Obviously, there's going to be difficulties, there's going to be challenges. But I think if you're an optimist and you're someone that wants to work, you know, for the Islamic project and Islam in general, you know, you got to understand that there's going to be challenges that lie ahead. So the situation, as we see on the ground right now, is not an easy one for the government. They have many different, like, I wouldn't like to be in their position, put it that way. Does that make sense?
So let's look at the so we've got the Alawites, we've got a fake Christian genocide that was being perpetuated online. We have obviously those who are either Shia or Ismaili. We have Druze. We have so many different ethnic and racial and sectarian factions. Can Syria actually be united under this so-called Islamic project that you hope or envisage happening?
I mean, let's be straight. I don't think Syria is the Islamic project, or, you know, so the utopic project that people see.
But the hopes, the optimism, the aspirations.
I think the aspirations are always there. We as people, you know, that believe in the Islamic, the Medinian, the Medina model, we believe that, of course, Islam has the solution, has all the answers, right? But it's one of those things where you got, like I said, you got variables. So there's challenges there. There's nefarious actors, people that want to destabilize Syria, that don't want this project to do well. And me, it's known that I've been critical of the government. I'm by no means or no measure a fanboy. And I think it's important to maintain that independence, say what's good when it's good and say what's negative when it's negative. Those checks and balances are very important if we want to see a strong Syria, you know, for generally for the Ummah, right? So when it comes to this whole Alawite situation, if I'm being honest, the situation and the way that Syria was taken was bloodless, bro. It was pretty bloodless. I mean, except for those military personnel that stood and fought when the military groups, when the rebels came into areas, because I was there front line, I was covering it as a journalist, right, with the media vest on and everything. I saw it firsthand, right, the way that people were treated. I even covered the way that amnesty was given to many of these people that were with the regime, and there was many people within the ranks that were disappointed, and they were angry about that. They were angered. Why have these people who were with the regime that fought us for so many years, that brutalized us, why have they been given an amnesty? And that was all bloodless, bro. I covered it. I seen it. I interviewed people that were like, yeah, I was with the regime for 7 years. Look, here's my gun. I'm handing it in, etc., etc. That all happened, right? But there was a pent-up anger there. People had a lust for revenge. There were people inside them that were you could say, were waiting for an opportunity. And that I think, if you look at any conflict like this, right, in human history, if you've been brutalized and you've suffered at the arms of your enemy, and then now you are, you know, in power over them, it's difficult not to, you know, exact revenge. And we're not on of revenge, right? It's your Islam that stops you from doing that. So of course you're going to have a minority of people who are going to want to do that. And what happened is, when there was an ambush on the general security services in the Latakia region, and many of the security forces who are youngsters from Idlib, from Hama, from the Freed Territories, were killed in that brutal way. And there's video footage of that, where they're all dead all over the floor, littered all over the floor, and there was sectarian chants, etc. What that did is that boiled over. And literally what you had, not even from the government, is that you had people. Syria's a place that's been in a war for 13, 14 years, bro. Everybody's armed. People were literally loading up. Tribes were saying, we're going there and we're gonna fight, right? So the government tried its best to quash that and not have, you know, random people doing that. But there were infringements, all right? Of course, the remnants of the regime, they wanted that. Of course, that's the reaction that they wanted, because they want to play to the Western audience that this is a sectarian thing. But the reality is, the majority is not like that. And the government is not like that. They haven't been calling for a genocide. They haven't been calling to brutalize these people. Even people, like I was saddened that there was a group of Alawites who were all medical students. They were killed, right? I was like, who the hell killed these people? Why did they get killed? You know, that's blatantly wrong. You know, that shouldn't have happened, right? How did that happen? Okay. Of course, they're not condoning that. Do you understand? But you have to look at the context. So infringements happened. At the same time, you've got these regime, you know, remnants who are, you know, destroying hospitals, killing people, doing ambushes, dressing up also in the generals, the security, the Jihad and Aman in their uniforms, and then also doing madness and doing crazy stuff as well. So it's not a simple situation at all. So you've got that going on in the coastal region. At the same time, you've got certain Kurdish areas that, you know, came and took extra territories in Aleppo. You got the Druze, who also not all of them in the south, but they were, you know, Israel meddling. Israel openly said that they were willing to get involved in coming into Jaramana in Damascus. So they made it very clear that, you know, we are trying to divide and conquer and cause issues, interfere in the internal affairs of the country. So any government, and I use the word government, you know, loosely, because you got to understand, up until 3 months ago, these guys were, you know, a militia, not recognized by anybody, not even controlling all of the freed territories. They were just controlling Idlib. They weren't controlling the countryside of Aleppo. That was controlled by the Free Syrian Army and different groups. So for them to now be controlling most of Syria, and then all of these internal struggles, it's difficult, bro. It's not easy. It's unrealistic to think that there's going to be, everything's going to be perfect, right?
So let me ask you just a couple of questions. I've got you here for another 6 minutes. So let's look at Syria. So we have in the west coast, in the coastal areas of Latakia and Tartus, which is where the Alawite community are there in high numbers. In the south, Dara and elsewhere, we have the Druze and the interference of Israel. But we also had some optimism in terms of the east. The recent agreement between the Syrian Democratic Forces and the Syrian government, where there was an agreement of some sort that the SDF would be integrated into the state institutions. Should we be optimistic about that?
Like I said, I'm not aware of all the finer details. I mean, for me on a personal level,
what's the chitter chatter on the ground?
I mean, for me on a personal level, I can now. There was a roundabout called Dawar Le Ramoun where Kurdish snipers were shooting at people that were driving by. So now we don't have to go on some crazy detour to go into Aleppo. So I'm happy about that. I can tell you that much. But I mean, of course, like again, there's certain tensions there. But at the same time, I see that there's a general optimism. But you've seen, look, you're going to have hardliners in every group. There was a video that went viral of Kurdistan Workers' Party, member basically blowing his head off. It's gruesome, getting an AK-47 on a live feed and blowing his head off because he was so angered about this deal taking place. Similarly, you're going to have some people on this side that are not happy about it. But I think the general feeling on the ground is that everybody wants a whole Syria where everybody's rights are respected, and everybody can, everyone's tired of war, bro. 14 years of war. People want to coexist. People want to be able to go east of the Euphrates. The Kurds want to be able to come back to Jandaris and Afrin. Do you understand? So there's a lot of optimism there. There's a lot of things that, people want to happen. The question is, will these groups stick to their agreements? And sometimes it could be individuals that are part of a group, not necessarily the higher command, that do something that sets off a chain reaction of events, and then the deal breaks down. And that's unfortunate. That can happen. So it's a very sensitive time. I mean,
very fragile. Everything seems quite fragile.
It is. It's very fragile. It's on a knife's edge, you could say, and that's going to take time to build trust. For things to happen, especially now. You could say that all of this stuff that happened in the coastal areas, I've spoken to certain government ministers, that's a setback for them. They didn't want this to happen. They didn't want to have an all-out war and fighting. But the reality is, some of these people that were fighting them, they found the papers with them that they had been given amnesty, and then they've been treacherous. So what do you do in that situation? What do you do in that situation?
The elephant in the room is Israel. Israel has been bombing. Israel has been bombing and making further incursions. To what extent and how much square miles they've taken, we don't know. But they have been making incursions. There is a military presence of Israel in mainland Syria. What's the conversation on the ground there? Because you'll have the critics of the Syrian revolution who'll say, "Oh, this was the plan all along, to topple Assad, to weaken the transit point of weapons from Iran to Hezbollah via Syria and Iraq, and by weakening Syria, by giving it to a jihadist militia group that allows Israel to make further incursions, the land route to give weapons to Hezbollah has been cut off. Thereby, we now have a weak Syria, a destabilized Syria, a Syria whose military capabilities have been bombed, and this is exactly what NATO and the Zionists wanted." So two questions. What's the situation on the ground in terms of conversations taking place with regards to Israeli military aggression? And number two, what would your response be to those who say that this was actually the plan all along?
So obviously, in terms of the conversations, if you're talking about the general layman when it comes to Israel and the incursions, of course, nobody's happy about that. Nobody is happy about that. And obviously, the vast majority, I don't think I've ever met a person in Syria that doesn't support Palestine and have sympathy with the Palestinian cause. If not the opposite, they openly show support for that. There's a large group of Palestinians that live here in Syria that were with the revolution and fought as a part of the rebels, right? So I think that's clear that there's clear support there. But there's also a sense of realism that, look, we've just come out of a long war. we've just taken ground, and we've done things that were unimaginable, and 3 months ago we thought were miraculous. And so now to expect us to go into a all-out war with Israel whilst we haven't even consolidated our own areas is really difficult. Does that mean that Israel is happy off the back of that? Yeah, of course, definitely. If I was Israel, okay, a'udhu billah, but but of course you'd be happy with the current situation in Syria, because you'd see that, okay, look, they're weak right now. I've taken Mount Hermon, I've taken the highest mountain in Syria that overlooks Damascus. So I'm in a strategically, militarily, strategically strong place. So yeah, for them, of course, I'm making inroads with the Druze. I'm making inroads with different communities. Of course, for them, it fits into their greater Israel project, expansionism, all of that stuff which they openly proclaim. So yeah, for Israel, there's positives there. But at the same time, I think we can't look at it in a linear fashion that, look, this harms Palestine. I think at the same time, Israel's gonna have in the back of their mind that this force, these people here, could potentially be a problem for me in the future.
They've already voiced that.
Yeah. So again, it's one of those things that it's not black and white. People can't just be like, oh yeah, this is weakened the axis of resistance. I was in Yarmouk 2 days ago. Just look at what they were doing to the Palestinians there. I think with the ummatic perspective, we have to be a lot more consistent. Does that make sense? Sure. So when it comes to, like, even now with the Alawites, I'll be one of those people that will say, yeah, the Alawites that are there, that are civilians, that have been given a covenant of safety and security, should not be harmed. They should not. No one should be going, no Muslim, no Syrian, nobody should be going into that area or any other area and killing people, just because of the fact that they're Alawite. That's 100% haram, not allowed, not good, But like I said, there's just so many factors, bro. It's a difficult situation.
Roshan, before I ask Tox some final concluding thoughts and comments, can you please play the clip of the road trip vlog, the trailer that me and Tox did? If you can, please play that clip. Roshan.
What are we doing today, Tox?
We are basically doing a mad 24-hour mission. This is actually like one of those YouTuber vlogs. We're actually vlogging it. 24 hours from Damascus to Homs, to the Khalid bin Walid Masjid. We're doing all the landmarks. Then Hamas City to see the famous water wheels. Then Aleppo Castle. Then to the north, Azaz, because we've got a conference at 10 p.m. And then we're going to try to get back to Damascus for 6 a.m. Fajr.
We can do it subject to no issues.
Inshallah, we can definitely make it happen. If anyone can make it happen, we can make it happen.
So I'll be keeping you updated throughout the day. Stay tuned. Assalamualaikum.
That was a mad road trip, isn't it?
It was a mad road trip. But my soundtracks were better than yours, bro. My soundtracks are way better than your funky,
you know this, the right tracks, innit? You're there with the pulse of the Syrians. Bro, concluding comments. I was out there within 7 days within liberation. I was with you. You took me right up to Azaz and back. And any concluding comments to our viewers and listeners to support Five Pillars in these concluding nights, bro?
I mean, there's a couple of things that I'd say. I'd say, first of all, it's easy to be an armchair critic. I think my advice to any Muslim out there is that we need to be involved in what's happening in the Ummah in some sphere. We need to ask ourselves, what can we actually do to help the Ummah to progress, right? That's number one. Number two, I'd say institutions like Five Pillars are very important. You guys now are pushing those boundaries. You guys are going out to these areas. Bangladesh, after they had their revolution, if you want to call it that, Afghanistan, coming to Syria, for a Muslim platform journalist to come out and to being this stuff, it is so important that we support you guys. It's so important that people understand the value of an organization like yourselves, because you're still quite niche. Do you understand? We don't have many Muslim, you could say, institutions that are politicized. A lot of our institutions, mashallah, are doing good work, but they're very, you could say, you could say they're apolitical, they're very service-based, whereas we need to start thinking that, okay, we need to engage in the Muslim world, we need to be involved in politics, we need to have a narrative, we need to be able to show people our version of events, not be spoon-fed a certain idea by, you know, Western narratives or even Eastern narratives. So I think, you know, the work that you guys are doing is commendable. I encourage every single person to support you guys, to donate to you guys, because just existing in this arena is very tough for you guys. I know ourselves as a charity, we, you know, are sometimes, we've lived that difficulty, bro. Being I don't even describe ourselves as a charity, right? We're more like political activists that are, you know, missionaries that are doing reform work in the Muslim lands, right? It's a bit complex, but we've felt that, and so we feel like your brothers on a similar mission. You understand that, you know, we need to be out there, we need to be pushing those boundaries, and that's why I encourage every single person that's watching right now to donate. Dig deep. Sometimes, yes, everyone sees what's happening in Gaza, everyone sees what's happening in Syria, everyone sees what's happening in Yemen, all these places where the blood is being spilt. But if we don't think long term, if we don't invest in our institutions, right, that are going to give us, you know, soft power, if you want to call it that, then we're going to be losers in the long term. We really need to change the mentality. We need to support these institutions. And yeah, Jazakallah khairan for having me on, bro.
Barakallah fiqh. May Allah bless you and preserve you. Convey my salams to everyone at Live Updates and their family. Assalamu alaikum bi. Take care.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
That was our dear brother Tox with some encouraging words to support Five Pillars. Before I bring my brother Robert Carter on, the senior correspondent who's got so many stories to tell, why have the donations slowed down, brothers and sisters? Why is the giving slowed down? I'll tell you why it's slowed down, because everyone started getting interested into the conversation. This happens. Whenever we start having good conversations, the donations slow down, when it should be the other way around. When we're having good conversations and we're talking about the work that's been done, that should be encouraging you all to be giving and giving way more. So my dear brothers and sisters, if you've just tuned in or you've just joined us or you've not supported us in any shape or form tonight, please support Five Pillars. Before we bring Robert on to tell us about the UK elections, his US assignment, his time in Lebanon, he's got so many stories to tell. Before we bring Robert on, Roshan, can you please show the video of the Syria and Bangladesh revolutions and the work that Five Pillars did during those two monumental and historic events last year?
2024 was the year tyrants fell and the statues were demolished. From the brutal Sheikh Hasina regime in Bangladesh to the despotic Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria, both secular dictators responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of Muslims had witnessed their people rise up for justice and liberation. In Bangladesh, a student-led movement managed to unite the third largest Muslim country in the world.
There were risk of our lives. Brothers, sisters are injured, got hit on my back.
In bringing down an anti-Islam regime that had ruled with an iron fist for 15 years. More than 2,000 Muslims were martyred in 1 month alone for this cause, while Narendra Modi's Hindutva regime continues to plot and plan against Bangladesh. In Syria, after a bloody 13-year revolution with the superpowers of the world preying on its demise, the Muslims of Bilad al-Sham took down a repressive Ba'athist regime that ruled for 54 years. Sidnaya prison, widely known as the human slaughterhouse, was one of Bashar al-Assad's notorious torture chambers. Father and son massacring and displacing millions of Syrians while selling its sovereignty to the highest foreign bidder. Many forgot and dismissed the revolution in Syria, but the Muslims of Syria believed in the promise of Allah. In both these historic and monumental events, Five Pillars was on the ground in Bangladesh and Syria in the immediate aftermath of their respective liberations, reporting, interviewing and filming documentaries with key stakeholders and revolutionaries from these blessed lands.
The site of this massacre would have looked somewhere like that.
No other Muslim media outlet in the English language from the Western world produced the timely, exclusive and high quality content that 5 Pillars did, demonstrating that we are a news publication with our finger on the Ummah's pulse. Our beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said in the famous hadith, "The parable of the believers in their affection, mercy and compassion for each other is that of a body. When a limb aches, the whole body reacts with sleeplessness and fever." With the Zionist entity failing miserably in defeating the resolve of the Muslims of Gaza, Afghanistan entering its 4th year of independence, and the Ummah in Sudan moving towards liberation, 5 Pillars will continue to provide media coverage of movements who want to break their nations away from the shackles of godless oppression and towards a future with justice and God consciousness. The question is, will you be a part of the Ummah's awakening, and will you help amplify their voice and their cause?
Roshan, please let our dear brother Robert join us. Robert, assalamu alaikum, bro. You're on, how you doing, brother? You okay?
Yes, wa alaikum salam. Good to be here. How you doing?
An honor to have you, bro. I know you've got so many stories to tell, but before I hand it over to you, I just want to remind our brothers and sisters who are tuned in right now that when you go off to an international assignment, there's various costs associated to it. Flights, accommodation, fixes, bribes, depending on where you go, content creation, filming, editing. There's so many things involved in international assignments. Minimum, I think the cheapest international assignment that we did this year was somewhere within 3.5 to 4 grand. Generally speaking, it's somewhere between 4 to 6 grand each international assignment. That means going out there, hiring a team out there, or taking someone out there with us to do the filming, the editing, the fixes, everything, it all costs. And brothers and sisters, if you want us to continue doing these international assignments when there's breaking stories or you know, these kind of monumental and seismic events taking place, then we need you all to give, and give in a big way. Without any further delay, I'm going to hand you over to Robert, because Robert's got so much to tell, because he was the most active when it came to the UK elections. Wallahi, he was up and down the country, shadowing, reporting, Rochdale, Birmingham, London, you name it. Robert, mashallah, tabarakallah, workhorse. And then after that, you had him flying out to Lebanon, where literally the bombing of Dahiyya was in vision. And then you had Robert flying out the next month out to the US. So, Robert, first and foremost, bro, how was the UK election coverage for you in terms of workload?
Yeah, it's been a busy time. I literally joined 5 Pillars, and it was just after October the 7th that I joined. And I've been, on the front lines covering all of the major stories pretty much since that time. The UK general election was an interesting one, because for the first time, there was a really important Muslim angle to this election. I mean, basically, it was an election all about Gaza. And obviously, for a Western election to be centered on this Muslim issue was quite something. Plus, it was fascinating to travel the country, to meet parts of the British Muslim community that I haven't met before, and to just go to areas where we don't always find stories necessarily. So it was really eye-opening. I met a ton of really great people. And it was really educational for me. I got to meet and understand how the community works in a very different way. And I think it just kind of matured me as a British Muslim, because our community is very diverse here, with brothers and sisters coming from a wide variety of other countries originally, and bringing their culture and their practices with them. So it was a beautiful thing. And I think it was history being made as well. So witnessing something important like that as a journalist is part of what we do, is to witness history being made. And it was really encouraging to see that the Muslim vote in this country, the Muslim community, has significant power, and it has sent shockwaves not just into Westminster and Downing Street, but across the Islamophobia industry in the West. And I now think that what we're witnessing happening now, leading up into the future elections, is a backlash, if you like, to Muslim activism, Muslim mobilization. The Islamophobia industry is now petrified of Muslims gaining serious ground in the Western world. And I think they're lashing out, you know, and that's why we're seeing Islamophobia outpouring online, rabid Islamophobes and thugs like criminals like Tommy Robinson are being platformed like there's some kind of hero, and there's a lot of backing behind these lunatics. It's because you know, they want to empower our enemies, you know. Even morons like Tommy Robinson is getting a lot of support, a lot of a big push to sort of get him somewhere. So, you know, we've got to deal with these new challenges. But certainly the election was it was a big project, but it had some big results as well, alhamdulillah.
One of the assignments that you actually did over the last year was going undercover to these Tommy Robinson marches. How was that experience?
Yeah, it's a weird one because, you know, obviously for me, I mean, my loyalties are with Islam first and foremost, obviously. But you have to remember, this is still, it's a bit hard to say. But it's like people in a way. You know what I mean? Like I grew up with these types. Do you know what I mean? So it was weird to sort of mix and mingle with them again. I mean, to be honest with you, I just pity a lot of these people because I mean, not the Tommy Robinsons, because they are the cult leaders, so they are the ones ultimately responsible for radicalizing what are essentially ignorant, naive, and lost people in this country. And that's what a lot of these people are. They're sort of like, they're stupid. Do you know what I mean? I'm sorry, but they're just stupid to think and believe that people like Tommy Robinson actually represent anything good or any hope for making this country or their way of life any better.
How do you think?
I just feel sorry for them mostly.
How do you think we've got to a stage where someone like Stephen Yaxley Lennon, a serial convicted criminal, mortgage fraud, battery, assault, immigration fraud, someone who's publicly said he's a cocaine addict, has gambled money, gambled people's donations. This guy's resume is, quite frankly, something out of a Guy Ritchie movie, right? How are tens and thousands of white Brits putting their trust in an individual like this? Can you just give us some kind of rational thinking behind this, Rob, bro? Because you'd think that you want a leader, fine, working class, fine, has something in commonality with you in terms of a struggle, right? But this is a common criminal. And even the articulation of his arguments is so low IQ, it's outrageous. So one would naturally think that if I'm going to donate to this guy's grift, he's going to naturally spend it on Charlie or Halls, one or the other or both. Yet people continue giving. Yet his support seems to be growing. Bro, where is the disconnect? I mean, where is the connection? Not the disconnect. Where is the connection between? Look, I'm sure there's many white British folk who have genuine concerns and grievances about government policies, whether it's the Tories or the Labour, whether it's to do with employment, whether it's to do with housing, whether it's to do with immigration, whatever it may be, the erosion of their culture, whatever it may be, and these are genuine, sound concerns and grievances. How do they connect that to Stephen Yaxley Lennon? And now we're seeing that this guy is now being, you know, reintroduced and reintegrated back into something of a position of leadership amongst the British right.
Yeah, I think like all criminals, they prey, they're predators and they prey on the vulnerable, right? And I think that the people that gravitate towards Yaxley Lennon are intellectually like vulnerable. You know, they really are not well educated about the world or what Islam really teaches. So if they live a poverty life or they feel grieved in some way, they are vulnerable to be radicalized by hate talk. And that's what we're dealing with here. You know, the Tommy Robinson thing, I think, is morphing into a cult of personality, which is being really amplified by a growing and quite powerful and influential right wing, basically in America. And I think that also Israel is involved in that. They're really amplifying and pushing right-wing voices and Islamophobic voices here in the West, and are trying to really even drag very fringe sort of extreme voices into the mainstream now. That's how bad the situation is getting. That's why Tommy Robinson, I mean, the guy doesn't know a word of Arabic, yet he's written books about Islam, I think, or something like that, or what the Quran teaches. Anyone with half an IQ could see this is a grifter. Do you know what I mean?
He wrote a book where he wrote a book where he basically put the Quranic.
Right, I don't even know.
Yeah, I always said to him that, look, for anyone to have any debate or intellectual discourse with you, you need to prove how many GCSEs you got, and then we can, from that point onward, we can then see how serious you are. But basically, he wrote a book where he thought, like it's a gotcha moment after 1400 years of people attacking Islam physically, militarily, intellectually. He put the verses and the chapters of the Quran in chronological order, and that somehow exposed Islam, that from this kind of peace-loving minority dawah to this kind of militaristic, global expansionist religion of the Medina verse. And he thought, that's it. The truth of the matter is that we don't think he actually authored that. I certainly believe he has a handler behind him. Who those handlers are, Allah knows best. But I think it's a shocking testimony to the white British working class that many have chosen this guy, this grifter, this charlatan, this common criminal as someone who would represent their causes. It's a very sad state of affairs. Roshan, can you please play 2 videos of yourself and Robert sticking it on Azhar Ali, who is a Labour candidate in Rochdale? And straight after that video, can I see your and Robert's victory march outside of the voting centre after Galloway's by-election victory? Can you please play those 2 videos back to back?
Mr. Ali?
I'm Roshan from 5 Pillars. Can you get a word?
You've got to go through the party.
We'll never get a chance. Basically, you want to know why you should vote for Muslims should vote for you. Why should Muslims vote for you? Do you still believe in the prevent strategy? Should Keir Starmer step down?
Won't you speak to Muslim media, Mr. Ali?
Is Labour Party a genocide?
Silence won't do, Mr. Ali. There's a genocide in Gaza. Muslims want answers, Mr. Ali.
Why won't you answer us, Mr. Ali?
Why won't you speak to Muslim media, Mr. Ali? There's a genocide, Mr. Ali. How can you justify being with a party which is complicit in genocide? How can you justify being in a party which is complicit in the genocide of Muslims in Gaza? Mr. Ali, Muslims want answers, Mr. Ali.
Why should they vote for a party of genocide that supports genocide?
Mr. Ali, running away and hiding won't convince Muslims to vote Labour, Mr. Ali. Muslims want answers, Mr. Ali.
What do you reckon, Robert? He wouldn't answer your questions.
Didn't want to speak to us. I mean, we emailed ahead actually 5 Pillars, so he knows that we've been wanting to communicate with him. And now that he's seen us, straight away didn't want to speak to us. And I think that that's very telling. The fact that he won't speak to Muslim media at a time when clearly Muslims are boycotting Labour in huge numbers. I mean, how serious is this guy? How serious is he about? I mean, how can he stand for a party which is complicit in the crimes in Gaza? And he has no answer for that. Come on, Gaza! Rob, well done.
Wow, it seemed like you. It seemed like you won the election, the by-election there. Look,
yeah, I should have stood. Yeah, I would have won by a landslide. Absolute landslide.
Let me ask you something before we move on to the US elections. Let me just ask you: was the work of 5 Pillars appreciated and acknowledged in the different towns and cities that you were visiting during the elections?
Yeah, I think it was. Not by everyone, to be honest with you, but that's because, you know, we were doing our job as journalists. Obviously, we do engage in activism, Islamic activism, and so on and so forth, but we're also journalists as well. So, you know, like, for example, we asked tough questions of some of the Muslim candidates that were stepping up. One of the big problems that existed that I think we need to try and learn from in the last general election was vote splitting. And that was something which we took a very harsh position on. In fact, we refused to get involved in a few areas, a few constituencies, simply because there was a vote split that wouldn't get resolved. And we just felt on principle, we just can't platform one side or the other. You know, if you're not going to resolve it for Gaza.
Some folk in Blackburn would disagree.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Blackburn was another one. Interesting story. But yeah, Rochdale. I mean, to this day, I'm still in contact with people up there, and yeah, it's a really strong community up there. I really like the Muslims in Rochdale and the surrounding areas. So yeah, hopefully we need a reason to go back up there. I think I actually missed the general election in many ways, simply because I had a reason to travel. Literally all week, every week, I was going around meeting Muslims and getting fed stories all the time and going backwards and forwards to Rochdale and everything. So yeah, I do miss it, but no, we did the best we could. There was a few that we missed simply because we didn't have the resources, and that comes back to why we're here today asking for support from the community. If we had a quarter or less, if we had like 5% of the budget that some of these big mainstream media platforms do, or some of these big channels do, we could achieve huge results. Given the support that we're already getting, which is quite frankly a small amount, we are still making quite a major impact nationally and even internationally from time to time. So you know, the fact is we're running we're running sometimes when we're only given the support to walk or crawl. You know, so if we just had more support, there's no doubt about it, we could make an even bigger impact. So that's just a frank message, I think, to people watching. As much as you guys must love Five Pillars, and I know many of you do, you know, we've made a decision not to receive state funding for a reason. You know, it's a principled position that we've taken, but we need you guys to meet us halfway on that. Keep supporting us, or else we just can't physically get to many stories. And arguably, I mean, it may have cost us maybe 1, maybe 2 seats even, because Five Pillars weren't even able to get there. Yeah. If I'm going to be unhumble about it, who knows? We could have swung a couple of seats that missed out narrowly by maybe 100 votes or less.
Definitely.
I think one of the Bradford seats, for example. Yeah, Liam Mohammed, we weren't able to get there properly. So, you know, if we had more journalists, we probably could even have changed the results there.
Absolutely, because I think one of the things people miss is that once you have a media outlet like Five Pillars and journalists like Robert on the ground shadowing certain candidates, it provides media, whilst remaining impartial and being non-partisan, there's still an element of coverage being given to independent Muslim or pro-Gaza candidates that they wouldn't receive from the mainstream, at least not a fair hearing. And having Robert around or Roshan around or other journalists around, it can give that extra nudge, and we could literally swing seats. That could have happened in Bradford. That could have happened in Redbridge with Sister Leanne. If we were able to shadow them more consistently throughout the campaign, we could have helped them. Now, moving on to the US elections. We flew you out. Trump won a landslide. You managed to speak to Jill Stein. You went to Dearborn, one of the largest concentrated Muslim communities in the US. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was really eye-opening. Again, it's a new part of the Ummah which I haven't dealt with very much, simply because of where we are. And I've only been to the States once before that, and it was for a couple of days. You know, so this is a community which I really don't know, and it was just really nice to see how American Muslims live and the differences, especially in comparison to how the election process works in the States compared to here in the UK. It's completely different. Sorry.
Did you get your head around how it works? Because some are still so in the UK, we have first past the post, yeah? What's the system in the US?
It's the Electoral College, which is really confusing, because basically some Electoral College votes are actually worth more than others, and it's a system which even Americans themselves don't particularly like, and even many Americans don't make sense of it. Trump actually won the Electoral College and the popular vote this time around, which is why he's so powerful. Plus, there are separate votes related to Congress and all sorts of things. So, it's a completely different system.
What was the vibe you got from Jill Stein?
Jill Stein is obviously she's a lefty through and through, Greens lefty. As far as the left goes, the Greens go. The Jill Stein Green in America is actually better than the Green Party as it exists in much of Europe. So, for example, the Greens in Germany are actually kind of pro-Israel, and they actually have criticized Jill Stein for her anti-Israel positions. So I think on many areas, especially the Gaza thing, Jill Stein is someone to be sort of respected for many of the things she's done. But the problem with the Greens is that they're basically like it's like a loser's party, really. They have like no potential really to sort of win anything. They just sort of say things of principle on foreign policy issues, but even on issues like same gender relationships and the rainbow mafia stuff, I mean, she's terrible, and all the Greens are pretty terrible on that. So again, American Muslims, I actually felt sorry for them in a way, because what can you do? Every single option was a bad one. Arguably, you could argue that not voting was the best option, but American Muslims wanted to do something for Gaza. What they did achieve, which I think was the right thing to achieve at the time, was to politically punish and humiliate the Democrats, which were the party of genocide up to that point, even if it meant basically backing Trump, which again is like the lesser of two evil argument. When you've got two incredibly evil candidates to choose from, it's just an impossible one. Trump is also now basically the president of genocide. It's like the Trump phase of the genocide now that we're entering in. So I think many Muslims will probably regret backing him. But yeah, it's just that debate that I witnessed and reported on: who to back, who should American Muslims vote for, and what should the community in that country do? Because you have to remember that America is basically it's like the peak of hostility towards the Islamic world. It's the main empire that exists today and is behind so many crimes in the Muslim world. So the fact that there are Muslims in there trying to kind of live in that country and be a part of that society, but also try and maybe make an impact for the rest of the Ummah elsewhere in the Middle East and Gaza, it was a really weird one to watch play out. And I mean, meeting Trump supporting American Muslims was just freaky. I never imagined that there would be Trump supporting American Muslims, but they do exist, and they're a passionate bunch as well.
Was it the Yemeni mayor? There was a Yemeni mayor or Yemeni faith leader who full on backed Trump. You spoke to him as well, didn't you? How was he? Like? Any regrets?
To be honest, I wanted to speak to him on camera. He was shy to do so because of the amount of pressure he was under. He was receiving an intense amount of backlash for the position he took, so he wouldn't speak on camera. But I did speak to him off camera. He had his reasons, and at the end of the day, at that time, I thought that it was very hypocritical for people to condemn him for backing Trump when there were Muslims like Mehdi Hassan, for example, passionately saying that you must support the Democrats, even though they are literally the ones doing the genocide. To that point, Trump wasn't responsible for the genocide. He is now.
And then afterwards doing
crazy.
Then afterwards doing the whole "I told you so" or "we told you so" kind of thing. Is Mehdi Hassan, Wahajat Ali, and a few others that were staunchly backing the Biden administration. Let's conclude on Lebanon. Even though Lebanon happened before the US, we sent you out within days of Israel's bombing campaign of Lebanon, targeted at Hezbollah. How was that week or so that you were there, bro? Because I know it was not safe.
It was a weird one. The thing is, again, it was like I have quite a good relationship with Lebanon and the Lebanese. I mean, the Lebanese people I've been around all my life since being introduced to Islam. Lebanese people played a key role in me taking my Shahada, and I've been to Lebanon prior to this. So, it was kind of a personal thing for me. And seeing them suffer and struggle in the way that they were, obviously the toll it was taking on the civilian population was really difficult to watch and to witness. And, you feel really useless. I mean, I'm just there with my camera, just filming and doing my job. But people are literally struggling to sort of survive in this situation. Not only that, but Lebanon is a country where you have refugees, like Lebanese refugees at that point, fleeing from the south and elsewhere to Beirut and North Lebanon. But you also had Syrian refugees that were there from the civil war time, and Palestinian refugees going back to like 1948, I guess, or around a bit not long after that. So it's literally a country of refugees of all different types, and they're all struggling in their own unique way. It was
the Syrians in Bekaa, like 1 million or so in Bekaa. So you're right, it's a nation of refugees.
Yeah, it is, and it was really upsetting to see. And yeah, it was weird as well, because this country is so used to aggression from Israel that they've also found this sort of way of continuing to sort of live and to carry on with life, even though they're literally being bombed and destroyed. I mean, the idea that Israel was only targeting military sites or only targeting Hezbollah, for example, is total rubbish. They were literally targeting civilian populated areas. Civilians were getting killed all the time. They were even targeting the Lebanese military. There were Lebanese soldiers who weren't engaging in the fighting at all, getting killed. And we saw civilian infrastructure getting destroyed. It was an insane situation to be in. But it made me think that if it's as bad as it is here in Lebanon, where Israel is restraining itself to a degree, because as we know, Israel will kill everyone. It's a mass murdering evil regime that kills journalists, aid workers, like literally enjoys killing kids basically, and does it on purpose. So if Israel is actually restraining itself a little bit here in Lebanon and it's still this bad, just imagine what our brothers and sisters are going through in Gaza. You know, it's I think after the Lebanon trip, I became more emotionally connected to the crimes that's going on there. And, you know, I'm not embarrassed to say I've shed tears. Literally tears, because whenever I see more footage of kids being pulled out of the rubble in Gaza or anywhere else, when you're kind of exposed to it firsthand, it traumatizes you to a bit. And I don't want to sit here and say I'm some kind of victim or I was in a war zone, because I was still relatively safe where I was compared to what it is in Gaza. Gaza's a different level, and I've never experienced that. But I'm just saying it exposes you to a tiny taste. How the Palestinians do it, I have no idea. It's obviously a miracle from Allah. They've got this kind of power from Allah to carry on. You know, Allah provides you strength to endure hardships if you believe and trust in Him. And the Palestinians have been given some kind of inhuman strength, superpower, really, to just endure this and keep staying on the land and not to surrender. That's why we should all honor and respect them so much, because they put up with things which I think so many of us would just like want to surrender. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it was a difficult one to experience for sure.
The US elections, the Lebanon war, you were active in the UK elections. You were pretty much there in all the major pro-Palestine marches, getting undercover in the Toby Robinson march. It's been really busy year for you, bro. I can testify as your colleague and as your friend and as your brother that it's been non-stop for you. It's been absolutely non-stop. So may Allah bless you and preserve you and accept your efforts, bro. Any concluding words of encouragement to our viewers and listeners to support Five Pillars before we wrap up the live stream tonight?
Yeah, I've said this before and I'll say it again. You know, I think everyone already appreciates Five Pillars, because wherever I go, people are always saying, yeah, we love the work you do, and we like you guys, we love Dilly, we love Roshan, and keep doing what you're doing. And I always get loads of handshakes and taps on the back when I'm at pro-Palestine demonstrations and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, Five Pillars may not be here forever. And I'm not saying that because I want it to happen or that we plan for it, but they may come after us. Like literally the government knows us and kind of is watching us and monitoring us. Michael Gove, the former, whatever he was, what was he, government minister? Housing, yeah, whatever he was.
Housing regeneration.
Islamophobe minister. He basically was going to name Five Pillars in Parliament and pulled out last minute. So obviously we're on their radar. Plus, like you mentioned, we go to dangerous places. You know, Lebanon was fairly dangerous for me. We want to go to Gaza. Roshan went to Afghanistan right after the US occupation ended, and you know it wasn't as bad as we thought, but it could have been dangerous. And Roshan's a guys reported in war zones before. So, you know, we take dangerous risks as well from time to time here and also abroad. So, you know, 5 Pillars, if you don't support us now, you're going to regret it in the end if something happens to us, you know. So give us the support that you know we deserve now to get us to a position where we can, you know, continue to do what we do on a much larger scale, because a time may come where it's going to be harder to support 5 Pillars if they do come for us. So make the most of this opportunity now, support 5 Pillars, keep us doing what you guys want us to do, which is making a real impact, because, you know, we're taking the risks. And I think Muslims need to think strategically, because there are many, many more threats on the horizon, which, to be honest, most ordinary Muslims are not going to be tackling. They're dealing with their 9-to-5 job day in, day out, dealing with their families. This is our job to deal with it. But you've got to supply us and support us, or else we'll be working with no ammo, no ammunition, working on empty canisters. So give us that support, keep us doing what you want to do, and inshallah we'll do the best we can to step up and do as you want.
Robert, Jazakallah khair, bro. May Allah bless you and preserve you. Ameen. Thanks for coming on, and I'll be seeing you in the future live streams in the coming days, bro. Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah. Thanks for having me on. God bless.
All right.
Assalamu.
My dear brothers and sisters, as today's live appeal comes to an end, alhamdulillah, we started very strong. Lots of donations came in via PayPal, bank transfer, super chats. Our brother Atariq from the US has made various super chat donations. But then it started slowing down. And not because the numbers that were viewing dropped, but mainly because, I don't know, maybe you became quite engaged in the conversations that we were having. But the reason why the 5 Pillars live appeals are not going to every 5 minutes ask you for donations is because the conversations that we're having, we hope that those conversations are a source of encouragement for you to support and donate. Not it's a source for you to become interested, immersed, and actually forget that the main objective for these live appeals is for an opportunity for you to support 5 Pillars, to put your money where your mouth is. And not only that, but to do so in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. And not that, to do so on the odd nights of Ramadan, a night which could be Laylatul Qadr, a night which Allah tells us in the Quran is better than 1,000 months. My dear brothers and sisters, before I bring Roshan on to just wrap up, if you're still logged on and you're still viewing and you haven't given, why haven't you given? I'm always baffled by this. If you're watching for the sake of watching, fine, Jazakallah khair for tuning on. How come you've not supported us? If there is something that you want us to do, drop it in the comments. If there's a reason which is stopping you from supporting us, drop it in the comments. Obviously, keep it respectful and clean. Otherwise, if you support the work that we're doing, you agree with what we've done, and you want to see more of it, you want to see more international assignments, you want to see more breaking stories, you want to see more widespread coverage of stories related to Islam and Muslims, not in the UK, but also in the Muslim majority world, why wouldn't you support 5 Pillars? No amount is too small and no amount is too large. So my dear brothers and sisters, in the concluding 5-10 minutes before this live appeal comes to an end, if you're still tuned in, give in any shape or form. No amount is too big or too small. Just remember this. If it's Laylatul Qadr tonight and you catch it, and we all catch it, and you support 5 Pillars and all the other initiatives that you're supporting, wallahi, it is as if we have done that particular act for more than 1,000 months. Just imagine the reward that's associated to this blessed night. So please support 5 Pillars, whether it's a one-off donation, setting up a direct debit. You've got the main donation link there. You've got the bank details there at the bottom, as well as PayPal, as well as Super Chat. Roshan, please come on and let's wrap up, my dear brother. How are you doing, Roshan? You okay?
Yes, yeah. As you say, it started off strong, and it's gone very quiet over the last half an hour or so. Although the numbers watching are slowly creeping up. I mean, we have across all platforms, we have about 500 people watching. Believe it or not. On YouTube, I think about 100. On Twitter, there's a few hundred. Facebook as well.
Okay.
So there are people watching, but yeah, people have stopped interacting, and Atariq has just put £21 in the website. Alhamdulillah.
Brother Atariq, I don't know who you are, but you kicked it off tonight, mashallah, and you've been giving. You've been giving via super chats, you've been giving via PayPal, and you're now giving via website. I think Brother Atariq is in the US. He's asked a few questions. He said, is the situation of Muslims in the UK better than the Muslims in the US? We would humbly and respectfully say it's better.
It's definitely better. Yeah.
Yeah. And
in
whilst,
the US, they're richer than us, aren't they? They've got bigger houses and bigger cars and more money, but there's not the same community. There's not the same community vibe as there is over here. I'd much rather live in the UK than the US.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about making hijrah to the UK, Faddal, come, Bismillah. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Name is Sufyan Julapali. MashaAllah.
What is Julapali? Is that Bengali or what is it?
Julapali could be sounds South Asian, sounds Asian. Not sure where though. Roshan, some concluding thoughts and remarks. It was our first live appeal. We kind of recapped the year. Obviously, some of the events that we spoke about today, there'll be entire live appeals dedicated to those. So we spoke about Afghanistan, Syria. We barely spoke about Afghanistan, but we will do in latter live appeals. We spoke about Syria today. There's going to be an entire live appeal based on on Syria, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan later on. There's going to be an entire live appeal discussing the US and UK elections in far more detail, actually looking at the work that's actually involved when Robert and Roshan or myself, and now Haris Tagari in the future, will go out. And what does it actually involve? What does the day look like? What are the costs involved and all that kind of stuff? But any concluding comments before we wrap up, my dear brother?
Yeah, all I would say is that, brothers and sisters, we don't hassle you all year round. We don't. Like a lot of charities and other organizations, you're getting text messages off them all the time and it's non-stop donation, donate. We basically make our money in Ramadan. And we appeal for funds in Ramadan, and then we put that war chest to good use for the rest of the year. So please, brothers and sisters, do donate. Even as we're kind of concluding this live appeal, if you can just keep donating right till the end, that will encourage us as well. Because at the moment we're feeling a little bit down. We were kind of lots of energy at the beginning, but it has tapered off. There's no doubt about it. So make us feel a bit better, brothers and sisters. Give us some energy. We need that fuel as well, to do the work. We need that encouragement. We need that pat on the back. So please go ahead and do that. But one question that we haven't answered, it was from a super chat. So I do feel that we should answer the question before the end of the live stream. Is that our
future plans for the year ahead?
Yeah. So basically our future plans is to do everything bigger and better. We want to hire more journalists in the UK, but also in strategic areas abroad like Afghanistan, Syria, Palestine, across Africa. We've hardly got anybody feeding us information from sub-Saharan Africa, for example, where there is loads, it's millions and millions, hundreds of millions of Muslims. And what else do we want to do? We want to do more documentaries. We want
media training.
More investigations, more media training. The media training is a really important thing because it's about the future. Because you and I aren't going to be here forever,
No.
And I'm getting a bit long in the tooth, and you're going to be nearly 40 in a few years' time as well. So yeah. So Dilly and I, and Robert, we need to train. We want 5 Pillars to stay around after we've gone. After we've physically departed this earth, to be a strategic shield and weapon for the ummah for years to come, for decades to come. We don't want it to be something that is totally dependent on us as personalities, but something that will continue into the future. So, brothers and sisters, what else do we want to do? We want to kind of upgrade our equipment. We need better cameras. We need better tripods. We need better video equipment, editing equipment. I need a new laptop. My laptop's like 9 years old, and it's on its last legs. So there's so many things that we need to do, brothers and sisters. But ultimately, it's all about the journalism and the content that we produce, and then getting it in front of eyeballs, as many eyeballs as possible, across as many platforms as possible. So, brothers, I won't say any more because I could talk for a while and beg for money more. But I think we've made the pitch now. So, brothers and sisters, it's over to you to kind of put your money where your mouth is. And we know that you love our work. So this is the time to support us.
Roshan, Jazakallah khairan. Thank you for joining me tonight, and I'll be seeing you on Saturday, which will be a very interesting live appeal because we'll be joined by Jada Franson.
Oh, wow! I didn't know that.
Yeah, Alex Phillips.
All right.
Paul
What
Williams.
appeal?
Paul Williams. Yeah, because it's all about it's our engagement.
You can't put Paul Williams and Jada Franson and Alex Phillips in one sentence, surely.
No, but yeah. No, because one aspect of the work of 5 Pillars in the last year or so has been my engagement with the far right and with British nationalists. I know some have quite divided opinions about it, but overall, I think many people have been quite optimistic and it's been well received.
Yeah.
My engagement with Jada Franson, with Nick Griffin, with Mark Collette, with Jim Dawson, Alex Phillips. Obviously, it's brought us a lot of regulatory issues as well. Obviously, we're no longer with Impress. But yeah, so this Saturday's live appeal will be around our engagement with the British far right. And we will have some very interesting guests, and those conversations will be very, very fiery, inshallah. So, Roshan, I'll see you on Saturday, dear brother.
All right. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters.
Brothers and sisters, I will wrap up now. And I'll say this much to you. You know, there's been many opportunities in the course of the last 11, 12 years where we could have accepted funding from individuals, institutions, bodies linked to governments. That opportunity has been there for us, foreign governments, as well as entities involved or linked to the establishment here. Those opportunities were there very early on. By Allah, we refused it. By Allah, we have refused it. Oh, that was a classic article when Majid Nawaz was called a donkey. That was a masterpiece. Who, by the way, is now a supporter of reform. MashaAllah, brother Aminur Rahman has just donated £10. May Allah accept it from you and make your way heavy in your mizan. You see, these £10, £20, £30, £20 direct debits, wallahi, they mean a lot more to us than the 6 figures and the lucrative sum of funding that we've been offered in the past. And we've said no. We've said no because we wanted to remain not just editorially independent, but financially independent. And we believe that a grassroots organization like 5 Pillars, which works at the service of the Muslim community and the Ummah at large, has to be reliant not only, of course, on marketing, social media revenue, and that type of money, which also comes in, alhamdulillah, but there is also a significant portion which is reliant on the community. Because ultimately, if we're here to serve the community, and by the way, we will always serve the community. There's one thing that Roshan and I have always said from day one. Lots of money, some money, little bit of money, no money, the work carries on. And we are a living proof of that. Because since 2013 to 2018-19, those 5-6 years, those formative years of 5 Pillars, as Allah is our witness, on these blessed nights, we took no salaries. We had expenses, we had work-related costs that were covered, but we didn't take salaries. We were in full-time jobs, both of us, whilst running 5 Pillars. So we're used to doing this work for nothing. We're used to it. And I've mentioned at our iftar event that the work of 5 Pillars is actually a fardu kifaya. It's a collective responsibility. Someone has to do it. It's a collective obligation. Someone has to do it. And we'll do it. And we'll carry on doing it so as long as there's a need for it. But to do it at an optimum level, to do it in a bigger and better way, that requires funding because of the lack of resources that we have. And on that note, I will say to you all, why would you waste this opportunity tonight? For many of us, it is the 21st night tonight. It could be Laylat al-Qadr. Why would you, of all nights of the year, of all the period and times of the year, would you choose this night to waste an opportunity where you can defend Islam and Muslims in the media? Brothers and sisters, give, and give in a big way. And there is no amount that is too small or too big. The donation link is there, our PayPal details are there, and our bank details are there. So my dear brothers and sisters, just remember this. Giving sadaqah does not decrease your wealth, it increases your wealth. It purifies your wealth. It is an expiation of your sins. Because we know that every good deed cancels out a bad deed. And on that note, let's make dua. First and foremost, let's make dua for the orphans and the widows and the poor and the needy and the destitute in the Ummah. That Allah replaces their hardship and the difficulty with ease and goodness. Ameen. Let's remember our brothers and sisters in Gaza, in occupied Palestine, in occupied Kashmir, in occupied East Turkestan, our brothers and sisters in the Rohingya camps, our brothers and sisters in Syria who are being bombed by Israel, our brothers and sisters in Lebanon who have also started getting bombed by Israel. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring liberation and security and freedom to the people of the Muslim lands who are being oppressed, occupied, bombed, sanctioned, genocided. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shift and change the state of the Ummah to one that is honorable and one that is not humiliating and one where we can remain steadfast upon the deen and live under the justice of Islam. Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answer the du'as of all the Muslims that are going through hardship and difficulty. Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove the oppression of all oppressed people who are facing injustice, irrespective of their faith. Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us steadfast upon our deen and give us istiqamah. Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give our parents and our loved ones a long and healthy and virtuous life. Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise our youth, our children, our grandchildren, our nephews, our nieces, our younger siblings to be amongst the righteous and pious and believing men and women of this deen. Ameen. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. آمين. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. آمين. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عني. آمين. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عني. آمين. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عني. آمين. My dear brothers and sisters, our next live appeal will be this coming Saturday at 10 p.m. UK time. I will see you all then. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Monday, 5th of August, the brutal Sheikh Hasina regime was toppled in Bangladesh. Then, on Thursday, 15th of August, Afghanistan celebrated 3 years since the end of the US-led occupation. And on Tuesday, 1st of October, occupying Israeli forces invaded Lebanon. Then on Tuesday, 5th of November, Donald Trump was announced as the winner of the 2024 US presidential elections. Sunday, 8th of December, the repressive Bashar al-Assad regime was toppled in Syria. For each of these historic and monumental events that will have a seismic impact for the Muslims of these countries and the region, 5 pillars were on the ground either during these developments or very soon after. Our deputy editor, Dili Hussain, visited his ancestral motherland of Bangladesh in the wake of its renewed independence from the Hasina regime, documenting, reporting and interviewing key stakeholders, revolutionaries and student leaders. Continuing with the Ummah's celebrations, Dili was also present on the 3rd year anniversary of Afghanistan's liberation from the US occupation. During this assignment, Dili interviewed senior officials of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, as well as filming documentaries on the Taliban administration's handling of the opium addiction and infrastructure development.
I'm at the largest drug rehabilitation center in Afghanistan.
Our senior correspondent Robert Carter was reporting from Beirut as Israeli bombs were decimating the southern neighborhood of Dahiyya.
A very big strike. Whoa! Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
We had to get Robert out of Lebanon in an emergency flight as Israel's bombing campaign intensified and international airlines were halting flights. And as American Muslims and pro-Palestinian supporters mobilized in their millions to punish the Biden administration and the Democrats for its complicity in Israel's genocide in Gaza, Robert Carter was also on the ground engaging with grassroots Muslim community leaders, Islamic activists, as well as interviewing the independent presidential candidate, Jill Stein. And finally, the year 2024 came to an end with an unmatic shock. After a bloody 13-year revolution and dynastic tyranny for 54 years, Bashar al-Assad was toppled by Syrian revolutionaries in a military offensive which caught the world by surprise. Dili Hussain was in Damascus to pray the first Jummah after liberation, where he also interviewed the now interim president Ahmed al-Sharaa, as well as documenting the crimes committed by the Assad regime in Sidnaya prison and Tadamum. Both Dili and Robert would have been in Gaza and Sudan had it not been for logistical and political issues placing these assignments on hold. For now, 2024 was the year that 5 pillars proved what it can and will do with the funding and resources required to be the only English language Muslim media outlet that will unapologetically amplify and advance the revival of the Muslim Ummah. Now ask yourselves this: what role will you play in the blessed month of Ramadan in supporting the Ummah's awakening? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Tawbah, انفروا خفافا وثقالا وجاهدوا بأموالكم وأنفسكم في سبيل الله ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون.